Welcome back to the FTTM podcast, your guide to getting the right product to the market at the right time. This week, we are going to focus on FTTM planning, how to execute to achieve right time.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, and just to set the stage for everyone listening today, FTTM stands for Fast Time to Market. So if you're trying to speed up your product development, but you feel like you are just fighting this invisible current all the time, this deep dive is going to reveal exactly why that's happening.
Oh, absolutely. The current is real.
Right. And to explain it, we're going to rely heavily on lateralworks research and lateralworks best practices today because they expose this massive blind spot in FTTM planning. And it basically all comes down to how leadership is measured, the corporate scorecard.
Yeah, the scorecard. I mean, the central thesis we found in the lateralworks.com papers is, well, it's honestly quite jarring when you first read it.
It really is.
It basically says that a scorecard is actually your strategy document, whether you officially label it that way or not.
Right, because people just behave exactly how they're measured.
Exactly. Your company might have this beautiful glossy presentation saying your primary goal is to get innovative products out to market quickly. But if the executive scorecard measures like isolated functional efficiency, the scorecard wins every single time.
Yeah. Before we get into the weeds on that, I want to give the listener a visual. I was thinking about this earlier. Imagine you were watching a high-stakes Olympic relay race.
Okay, I'm with you.
But there's this bizarre twist to how the judges are actually scoring the race. They are strictly evaluating each runner on their individual running form, their posture, their individual 100-meter split time.
Right, so just their personal performance.
Exactly. And they're handing out gold medals for the most beautiful, efficient sprinting imaginable. But, and here's the catch, the judges are completely ignoring whether or not the runners actually pass the baton to the next person.
Wow, yeah. So you'd end up with 4 perfectly efficient runners all celebrating their individual scores while the baton is just sitting on the ground back at the first turn.
Right. Which is such an incredibly frustrating image, but it perfectly captures this whole conflict. Let's unpack the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
Because the research points out that the actual work required to build a new product, it flows horizontally, right?
Right. Yeah. It goes sideways across the whole organization.
Yeah. It starts with gathering customer evidence, and it crosses over into concept, bridges into design, hands off to manufacturing, and, eventually it actually reaches revenue.
But almost every traditional company measures performance vertically. I mean, think about it. Engineering leadership is judged on resource utilization and budget adherence.
Right.
Marketing is judged on lead generation. Operations is judged on supply chain costs. So every department is just looking up at their own vertical silo.
They're just looking at their own split time.
Exactly. Nobody is officially measured on the successful horizontal crossing of those boundaries. Nobody is measured on the baton.
But I mean, surely keeping functions efficient is just good business, isn't it? Executive teams use those vertical metrics to maintain control.
Right.
To keep the company safe.
Yeah. Well, you would think so, but the data paints a very, very different picture. The lateralworks research highlights this statistic that just completely upends that conventional wisdom.
Yeah, I remember reading this. It blew my mind.
Right. Across the industry, measuring budget adherence, which is, the absolute classic vertical efficiency metric, it actually has a significant negative correlation to both short-term profit growth and long-term stability.
Wait. Let me make sure I'm hearing that right. You're saying the very metric that executives use to prevent the company from overspending is actively hurting their profit and hurting their fast time to market.
Yes, actively hurting it.
How does that actually happen on the ground, though? Mechanically?
Well, think about the behavior it incentivizes.
Right.
When a department head is judged solely on keeping their functional costs down, what do they do when a cross-functional product team hits a sudden hurdle and needs emergency help?
Oh, I see. They probably say no.
Exactly. They refuse to allocate an extra engineer, they hoard their resources, they delay necessary testing just to save a few dollars this quarter so their personal scorecard looks good.
Wow. So the cross-functional team just ceases to be a real unit.
Yeah, they don't have a shared goal anymore. It just becomes like a recurring meeting that people attend because their true loyalty, their everyday behavior, it belongs to the vertical function that controls their bonus.
That makes perfect sense. They are protecting their own split time, even if it means dropping the baton.
Exactly.
To see how this vertical trap plays out in the real world, I really love this one anonymized case study from the lateralworks.com papers. It was about a mid-market hardware company.
Oh, yeah, the hardware transition one. That's a great example.
Yeah, so this company, They were highly profitable, but they realized the future was digital. So they were executing this massive strategic shift away from like traditional standalone hardware toward connected products, software ecosystems, and recurring revenue.
Which is a massive transformation. That requires entirely new ways of working across departments.
Right, totally. And to track this new strategy, the management team proposed a new scorecard. And I found their list in the research, and I kind of want to play devil's advocate here with you.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because they proposed 5 metrics that sound incredibly logical to me. Like, if I was on that board, I'd probably nod along.
What were they again?
They chose cycle time reduction, new products released per year, performance to schedule against a baseline, product quality, and time to break even.
Right, the classic list.
Yeah. I mean, if my goal is fast time to market, measuring cycle time and schedule performance feels like FTTM 101. What is the flaw here?
Well, the flaw becomes really obvious when you hold that list up against the reality of navigating a complex transformation. Those metrics fail a leadership team on 2 very specific fronts.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, just run a hypothetical stress test on that scorecard. If the company's entire new digital platform, the very thing that is supposed to save their future, if that was completely canceled tomorrow, would any of those 5 metrics necessarily turn red?
Oh, think about that. You could still reduce cycle time on your old legacy products.
Yeah.
You could still pump out traditional hardware to hit your products per year quota.
Exactly.
Your legacy product quality could be totally fine. Wow. The entire new strategy could literally die, and the scorecard would still look completely green.
Yes. They are entirely blind to the new strategy. They're measuring the company they used to be, not the company they're trying to become.
That is wild. What's the second failure?
The second failure is just as critical for FTTM planning. Those 5 metrics are almost entirely lagging indicators. I mean, cycle time, products per year, time to break even. You only calculate these numbers after the money is spent, the product is out, and the time is already lost.
Right. It's the equivalent of steering a boat by staring at the wake behind you.
That's a perfect way to put it. By the time you notice the wake is curving the wrong way, you've already hit the rocks.
Yeah, you can't change the outcome. You can only document the failure at that point.
Exactly. So if you want to achieve fast time to market, you need forward-looking indicators. You need to see the rocks before you hit them.
Okay, so how do we fix it?
Well, this is where lateralworks best practices introduce a really rigid 12-metric framework. It's designed specifically to pull the organization horizontally, and it's divided into 3 groups of 4, attacking different levels of the problem.
Let's get into the mechanics of this framework, because I think this completely changes the conversation in the boardroom. Let's start with the first group, Tier 1.
Okay, so Tier 1 is focused on enterprise outcomes, and these are reviewed quarterly.
And the core question here is basically, is the strategy actually manifesting in reality, right?
Exactly. And the very first metric they use here replaces that highly flawed new products released per year number. They call it the Vitality Index.
The Vitality Index. I love that name. What exactly does it measure?
It measures the percentage of your total revenue that comes from products launched in the last 3 years.
Oh, interesting. So it ties it to revenue, not just a raw count.
Right, because counting raw products per year is incredibly dangerous. It actively encourages teams to game the system.
Wait, how do they game it?
Oh, it's so easy. If a product manager's bonus depends on launching a high volume of products, they will just take one basic piece of hardware, maybe paint it 3 different colors, assign it 3 different SKUs, which, are just unique inventory barcodes, and then confidently claim to the board that they launched 3 products.
Oh my gosh. So you end up flooding your supply chain with meaningless variants that add 0 real value to the customer.
Exactly. And meanwhile, your massive, complex, connected platform upgrade the difficult project that actually secures the company's future that counts as 0 products on the scorecard because it takes 18 months to build.
Wow. Yeah, that's completely broken. So the Vitality Index fixes that by weighing innovation by its actual revenue value in the market.
Precisely. But there's a catch. If you push a company too hard on just the Vitality Index, you create a new problem. Teams become so obsessed with the shiny new products that they neglect the profitable legacy products that are actually funding the whole operation.
So you need a counterbalance.
Right. And that brings us to the second Tier 1 metric, market share by category. You have to aggressively defend the core business while simultaneously building the new one.
Yeah, that makes sense. It prevents them from cannibalizing their own base just to hit an innovation target.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the third metric?
The third one is where a modern digital strategy really gets tested. It's the connected attach rate.
Right. And I noticed the lateralworks best practices are incredibly strict about how this is defined.
Very strict.
It's not just tracking how many smart devices were sold.
No, absolutely not. It specifically measures products that are activated and paired to a network within 30 days of purchase.
Why is that 30-day window so important?
Because that distinction is the difference between a successful digital strategy and a catastrophic failure. In modern product development, sold does not equal connected.
Right.
If your entire business model relies on a software ecosystem, user data, and recurring revenue well, a customer who buys your hardware, puts it on a shelf, or just uses it as a dumb standalone device, that is a strategic failure.
Yeah, I mean, might have paid for the physical box, but your ecosystem isn't growing at all.
Exactly. And that naturally leads to the fourth metric, which captures the result of a strong ecosystem, recurring revenue.
Okay, so Tier 1 tells the CEO if the overall horizontal machine is building the right kind of company.
Right.
But Tier 1 is entirely made of quarterly lagging indicators. I mean, they're great for the board, but if you're a product manager on the ground, a quarterly revenue metric doesn't really help you spot a bottleneck today. Like, you need a smoke alarm.
Yes. And that brings us to Tier 2, portfolio and program health. These are reviewed monthly, and they serve as your leading indicators.
The smoke alarms.
Exactly. This is how you spot a schedule slip before it permanently damages your time to market.
So what's the first one in Tier 2?
The first is gap to target. Now, instead of tracking performance against some, static baseline drawn up a year ago in a vacuum, this compares the bottom-up, realistic finish date your engineering team is giving you today against the date you actually committed to the market.
Oh, so you're constantly forcing the gap into the light as it forms. You can't hide from it.
Exactly. But knowing you have a gap isn't enough, right? You have to know why you are slipping.
Yeah, and I found the research on the second metric absolutely fascinating. It's called decision latency.
Oh, this one is a game changer.
Yeah, it measures the sheer number of days from when a product team officially requests a decision to the day leadership actually records a final answer.
When we talk about fast time to market, lateralworks research identifies slow, ambiguous decision-making as one of the most destructive sources of delay in any large organization.
It's so true. A cross-functional team hits a roadblock, they punt a strategic decision up to the executive committee, and then it just sits there.
Yeah, and the team is entirely paralyzed. I mean, they can't move left, they can't move right. They are just burning budget waiting for permission to do their jobs.
So what decision latency does is it takes this vague cultural complaint, people whining around the water cooler saying, our leadership decides too slowly.
Right, which leaders usually just ignore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this turns it into a hard, quantified metric right on the executive dashboard. It forces the leadership team to stare at a number that proves they themselves are the bottleneck.
It holds a mirror up to the boardroom. It's brilliant.
Okay, so what's the third leading indicator in this tier?
It's a critical path role fill rate. It simply tracks if the programs you committed to the market are actually fully staffed with named, dedicated owners.
Which seems so obvious. But in reality, how often do we greenlight a project and say, oh, well, we'll figure out who is leading the software integration next quarter?
All the time. And then the project just languishes in this ghost state for 3 months.
Yeah, nobody's actually driving the bus.
Yeah.
Okay, and the fourth one in Tier 2.
The fourth metric is the ultimate honesty mechanism. It's forecast accuracy.
Oh, boy.
This looks back and compares the actual real-world revenue of a product against the wildly optimistic business case forecast that was used to get it approved at the funding gate.
Oh, you mean the classic hockey stick forecast?
Yes, exactly.
Where the revenue chart magically shoots up to the moon in year 3.
It feels like every product manager invents amazing, completely fictional numbers just to get their project funded over all the competing projects.
Right. And by tracking forecast accuracy, you systematically dismantle that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a product manager knows their actual market performance will be aggressively measured against their initial funding pitch well, the fiction stops.
Because they know they'll be held accountable for those moonshot numbers.
Precisely. The company stops allocating precious capital based on theater and starts allocating it based on reality. Okay, so Tier 1 proves the strategy, and Tier 2 keeps the pipeline healthy and honest.
All right.
But there is a glaring hole here. You can make blazing fast decisions, you can hit all your internal dates, you can get a product to market in record time. But if the product is broken or the profit margins are completely upside down, FTTM doesn't matter. You just efficiently delivered a disaster.
Which is exactly why Tier 3 focuses entirely on quality and economics. And these metrics are owned directly by product owners, quality assurance, and finance.
Okay, what's the first one in Tier 3?
The first is field quality. But the lateralworks best practices apply a very vital filter to how this must be tracked. You absolutely must separate test and spec returns from actual hardware failures.
Yeah, this was a massive aha moment for me when I read it. A test and spec return means the customer got frustrated and sent the product back. But when your engineers plug it in at the lab, it works perfectly fine. It actually meets all the engineering specifications.
Exactly. And if you lump those test and spec returns together with genuine hardware defects into one giant quality metric, you completely hide the root cause of your problems.
Because they represent two entirely different failures in the horizontal flow, right?
Right. If a component genuinely fries and the device dies, that is a reliability defect. You need to go audit your manufacturing partners or source better components.
But if the device tests in spec, the hardware's totally fine. The customer just couldn't figure out how to turn it on, or they couldn't get it to pair with their Wi-Fi.
Exactly. It's a usability problem. It's a documentation problem. Maybe it's just a terrible user interface. The solutions to those two problems have absolutely nothing in common, so measuring them as one single number is basically useless.
That is such a good point. Okay, what's the second metric in Tier 3?
It tackles the digital side, ecosystem quality. This tracks things like pairing success rates, data sync failures, and, how often the companion app crashes.
And there was a really critical warning in the research regarding this, right?
Yes. The telemetry required to capture this data must be specified and funded as a non-negotiable requirement in the very first release of the product.
And just to clarify for anyone listening who might be unfamiliar, telemetry is essentially the automated system where the device phones home to the company to report its status or any errors.
Right, and you cannot retrofit telemetry onto shipped hardware. It's impossible.
So if you rush a physical product out the door to hit a fast time to market goal, but you strip out the telemetry software to save time, you are flying completely blind.
Exactly. You won't know the app is crashing until thousands of angry customer reviews hit the internet 6 months later.
And by that point, your time to market advantage is entirely wiped out because your engineering team is trapped in a reactive crisis mode, just fighting fires instead of building the next product.
Exactly. It's a total disaster. Moving to the economics, the third metric is time to break even.
I really like this one. It's brilliant from a psychological perspective because it forces the cross-functional team to act like a mini business.
Yes, they aren't just trying to throw a product over the fence to sales and wake their hands clean. They actually own the economic reality until the product pays back its development costs.
It fundamentally changes the design decisions they make on day one because they know they're on the hook for the profit margins.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final metric, cycle time.
But I noticed the definition of when the cycle time clock actually starts is highly specific in the lateralworks guidelines.
Oh, the definition is everything here. Most companies start the cycle time clock when a project is officially approved, a budget is assigned, and a team is formed.
Which makes sense on paper.
But it's a massive mistake. You have to start the clock at the very first idea discussion.
Let's explore that because this dives into what the industry calls the fuzzy front end, right? It's that gestation period between an idea floating around a whiteboard somewhere and an actually staffed team starting the work. If we only start the clock when the budget is approved, we are completely ignoring the months or even years that an idea spends just bouncing around casual executive coffee meetings.
That is exactly the problem. If you don't measure the fuzzy front end, the largest single source of delay in your entire company remains invisible.
Wow.
If you only measure the officially funded phase, you might look at your scorecard and think, hey, we have a blazing fast 9-month development cycle. And you all pat yourselves on the back. But the truth is, that idea sat in gestation, waiting for executive alignment for a full year before those 9 months of work even started.
So it actually took you 21 months to get that product to market.
Right. You are lying to yourselves about your real time to market. By starting the clock at the first idea, you force the organization to confront how much time they waste before the real work ever begins.
That's incredibly powerful. So those are the 12 metrics. 4 for the enterprise strategy, 4 for portfolio health, 4 for quality and economics. It's a beautifully contained system.
It really is.
But, anyone who has ever survived a corporate environment knows exactly what happens next. A department head complains that their specific area isn't being highlighted, and suddenly your crisp 12-metric dashboard balloons into a 32-metric monstrosity.
How you stop the bloat.
Yeah, we see this all the time. But a scorecard with 32 metrics is just corporate decoration. I mean, it is mathematically impossible to manage a team against 32 competing priorities.
Definitely. So how do they handle it?
To protect the framework, lateralworks best practices introduce a secondary system, and they call it the register.
Okay, what exactly goes into that register?
Well, there are dozens of highly specific operational metrics, things like first-pass gate yield, which tracks how many products pass quality checks on the line without needing manual rework, or schedule float, which measures the buffer time you have before a delay impacts a launch.
Right, those are important things to know.
They are incredibly useful diagnostic tools for running the business, but they are too deep in the weeds for the executive dashboard, so they belong in the register. And there is a strict, unbreakable rule here.
What's the rule?
To promote a metric from the register up to the headline 12, you must remove one that is already there.
Oh, a strict one-in, one-out rule?
Yes.
That's brilliant. It forces executives to actually debate and prioritize what truly matters most right now, rather than just endlessly adding pages to a slide deck to avoid hurting someone's feelings.
Exactly. And speaking of slide decks, the physical execution of this framework is absolutely critical to its success. These 12 numbers must live on a single one-page dashboard, and the leadership team must review these 12 numbers together in one room, looking at the same page simultaneously.
Wait, why is the physical setting so important?
Because if a CEO takes these 12 cross-functional metrics and then reviews them one-on-one in private meetings with each functional head, you completely ruin the system.
Oh, I see.
You immediately revert right back to vertical measurement, where everyone just defends their own silo. The shared accountability in that room is what makes the horizontal alignment actually work.
Which raises an incredibly sensitive question about corporate culture, I think.
Okay, shoot.
We have this one-page dashboard. The whole leadership team is sitting in the room. What happens when a metric on that dashboard turns red?
Yeah, that's the big question. And this is perhaps the most profound psychological insight from the lateralworks research. When a metric turns red, it must trigger analysis and an offer of help. It must be viewed by the leadership team as a failure of the system, not a failure of an individual person.
That makes me think of, like, the check engine light in your car.
How so?
Well, if your mechanic screams at you and docks your pay every single time the check engine light comes on, what are you going to do?
Right, you'd panic.
Yeah, you aren't going to spend time diagnosing the engine block. You're just going to put black electrical tape over the dashboard light so you don't have to look at it and keep driving until the car just explodes.
That is precisely how high-fear corporate cultures operate. The exact moment a red metric triggers punishment, public shaming, or a loss of status in that review meeting, the organization will stop producing honest red metrics.
Yeah, they'll just hide it.
Exactly. Project managers will pad their schedules to ensure they never miss a date. Engineers will hide their defects. Sales will massage their data. The dashboard will turn completely green and completely useless in the exact same quarter.
So you end up with a beautifully green scorecard while the actual company is actively sinking.
Precisely. And this cultural reality leads to the final and honestly the most heavily debated rule from the best practices, the compensation rule.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, if you want to permanently change behavior, you eventually have to change how people are paid. But the warning here is explicit. Do not tie these new 12 metrics to executive compensation in year one.
Really? That seems counterintuitive. I mean, if we just spend all this time proving these are the perfect metrics to drive fast time to market, shouldn't we pay people to hit them immediately to accelerate the change?
You would think so. But if you tie money to a metric before the system is stable, human nature takes over. Think about it. In year one, the organization is still figuring out how to pull this data horizontally. They are still arguing over definitions. If you tie executive bonuses to the connected attach rate before the technical definition of connected is completely locked down and auditable, people will find loopholes to get paid before the measuring even begins.
Oh, yeah. They will absolutely game the system to protect their income.
Exactly.
So you have to let the dust settle first.
You have to wait a full year, run the dashboard, let the definitions harden, force the functional leaders to get used to looking at the horizontal flow of the product without their paychecks being on the line.
And then what?
And then, in year two, once the data is clean and the culture has adapted, you tie a shared slice of every executive's variable pay to the Tier 1 enterprise metrics.
So the head of engineering, the head of marketing, and the head of operations, they no longer just get paid for keeping their own vertical silos efficient. They all have a significant piece of their bonus tied to the exact same horizontal outcomes.
Yes. That shared slice of the pie is the only way to permanently break the vertical trap. It forces the horizontal crossing of the product to become everyone's shared problem.
It fundamentally rewires the company's DNA.
It really does.
Well, we've covered a massive amount of ground today, from the dangers of steering by the wake to exposing the fuzzy front end to the psychology of the check engine light. And it all loops back to that startling thesis. Your scorecard is your strategy document.
Absolutely.
You can't just mandate fast time to market. You have to measure the organization in a way that allows horizontal speed to happen naturally, which leaves you, the listener, with a final challenge.
Ooh, I love a good challenge.
Tomorrow morning, I want you to pull up your own organization's scorecard. Really look at the metrics you are using to judge success. Is it a unified strategy document that tracks the horizontal flow of a product from a whiteboard idea all the way to a connected revenue-generating customer?
Oh.
Or is it just 5 functional vertical scorecards stapled together, hiding behind a corporate logo? Ask yourself, are you measuring the baton or are you just measuring the individual runners? That might be time to change the rules of the race. Thanks for listening. Make sure to tune in next week where we will dive deeper into key practices of FTTM teams.